So we're going to be exploring user journeys. What are they? Why use them? And we're going to get your hands on with a couple of activities to help you experience using them. We don't have a huge amount of time today, so it's not going to be a really exhaustive workshop. But hopefully this gives you enough of a taster that you can have a go at making a journey map out in the real world. So these skill gyms, they're less about us claiming to be experts and just talking at you for 90 minutes. It's more about us sort of collaborating and giving you an opportunity to explore the subject. Before starting, I'd like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you today from Perth in Western Australia, and that the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation are the traditional custodians of this land. The Noongar calendar has 6 seasons, not the 4 that you might be used to. And we're just leaving the season of Jilba with the last of the rain and a bit of cooler weather. We're going to shortly enter Cambaran, which is represented by the colour yellow, as it symbolises the return of warm weather. I'd also like to pay my respects to traditional owners and elders past, present and emerging in whichever region you might be joining us from. And I acknowledge First Nations people for their ongoing connection to country, their resilience and the contributions they make to our communities. So my name is James. I'm the newest member of Skills of the Modern Age. I've been here, I think this is my 4th week now. And I'm still under training a little bit, so I apologize if we have any technical glitches, awkward silences, coughs, sneezes, clicking, anything like that. And for those that have not met us before, Skills of the Modern Age is a group of passionate innovators, and we out there to empower organizations and communities and people to use creativity, innovative practices to make change, tackle complex problems, and do good in the world. And let's start this session by getting your brains active and hopefully getting to know each other a little bit through this. And we're going to try something new. This is a new product that we've just built here at Soma. I'm going to share a QR code with you. So if you can grab your mobile, if you have one, and we're going to play a little emoji-based game. This hopefully will get us all warmed up. Apologies, I'm not quite getting that up to you. Cool.
It's on the screen, okay.
Oh, awesome, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Can you see it okay? Yeah, I'm not seeing it. First technical glitch.
No, we can see it on our screens. Well, I can anyway.
Yeah, we can too.
Yeah, I can see it. All good.
Your window.
Ah, there we go. Now I've found it. Okay, excellent. Good stuff. Okay, so hopefully it looks like you're all getting in there. So we're going to play a little bit of a game, and you can use this to describe your day so far, but using 5 emojis. We'll give you a couple of minutes just to play around with that. Cool. All right, let's have a look at what people have come up with. And seeing that? Cool. All right, who's got something interesting that they would like to share? Let's have a look. Oh, Nicole, looks like you went out for an ice cream this morning.
I was dealing with my daughter requesting to have ice cream for breakfast.
Excellent, excellent. I agree with your daughter. Well done, well done.
And then driving to work, lots of meetings, lots of talking, and I don't know what to put for the last one right now.
Maybe that's how you'll
some
feel at the end of the day after those meetings.
Yeah.
Who else have we got? Izzy, did you go for a surf or a swim this morning?
Hi, yes, I did. I went to the beach today and had a little swim. And then I've just got the sun because it started out sunny, but now it's clouded over. I'm in Melbourne and I made some chicken soup and just a lock to represent however lockdown I am.
Well, it sounds like an amazing day so far, apart from the lockdown part.
I've been pretty lucky.
Awesome, thank you. Cool, what else do we have here? Oh, Matt, looks like you had avo toast for lunch or something.
Well, bear with me. I'm using you.
Oh,
that's me.
That's the other guy that's here.
For those who don't understand what's going on, I also work with Soma and I'm supporting James with his facilitation. So he didn't realize that this was me, but I did. Avo toast for breakfast this morning, did a bit of reading, jumped on the train, and have been on my laptop ever since. Not too bad a day so far.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys. That's good fun. I think that worked quite well. So you actually just took part in a little piece of user journey research for us in how we use that. So great, that seemed to work. Awesome, cool. Okay, so let's get started properly. So first question, I guess, that a lot of people have is, what is a user journey? Well, a user journey is just a, told that's not up. Okay. Let's go back to, apologies, see, technical glitches. Let's try that. Cool. Okay, so, try this one. Is that better? Okay. Maybe try this one. Okay, my apologies. Yeah, so a user journey is a way of visually mapping a process a person will go through when they use a product or service. This might be a real or existing product, or it might be a process that you use when you're planning out anticipated or future services or products. But in either case, whether it's a real or a future product, you should be basing this on truth and real world insights. And then think of this as telling a story of a user as they move along a timeline of accessing your product or your service or using something that you've put out there. Why do we create user journeys? Well, they're really a key piece within a product or service sort of design and development journey. So it forces a conversation with your team. It creates a shared understanding of the user and a shared vision of the product or service. Without this shared vision for this product or who the user is, then there's a real risk that there'll be nobody within your team that has any responsibility for looking at the user's point of view in this journey. And the knock-on effect of that is that across your team, everyone will have a very different idea for what success looks like for both your organization and the user. So if you don't take this holistic approach, you're going to end up with a user that just ends up accessing a very disjointed or sort of poorly planned out or thought out product or service. So when I do user journeys, I do have a few top tips that I like to share every time I do these things. So You should always base your journey on a user persona that is based on real-world insights into your user or customer. You might gather these through research, interviews, observations, maybe experiencing this thing for yourself. If you just assume who your user is, you're taking these sort of embedded biases that you have yourself, and this can lead you down the wrong path. You might end up creating a product that nobody actually needs, or answering a question that your customer was never actually asking in the first place. Focus on process. So this is when you're developing your user journey, you don't just describe the process that your user is going to go through. You need to get into the skill set of actually thinking about every single little interaction that your user is going to have with this service or product. If you can really get into that, then this will really start to highlight sort of tricky little bits of your product or service that are going to be hard for a customer to understand, or they just put kind of roadblocks in people's way a little bit. And my third tip is like, you might spend quite a long time putting together these user journey maps, but then you need to do something with it. It's not, particularly good to do all this work and then just kind of roll it up and put it in a drawer somewhere and forget about it. So once you've made your user journey map, you'll see highlighted areas that need some action. And you can take these things and you can actually turn them into action items for specific people to do something with those things. I assume there's going to be quite a few of you that may have already seen a user journey or done them before or had some time with them. Does anybody there have any thoughts on these tips or any of their own tips to add in?
Hi, it's Rosie. I've used customer journey mapping, as I've called it, quite a lot over the years. And I think the hardest part sometimes is understanding the stages that the customer goes through in order to start the process mapping, sort of customer journey mapping exercise. So I think I'd have that in there, that give that some thought before you actually start a session, and then validate it and agree it with the users or the people that are going to be using the persona.
Yeah, that's really great feedback. Yeah, actually getting those phases established and understanding what's happening within each phase. We will touch on that later as well. So thank you for that. Is there any others?
It's Caroline here. I was just going to mention, like, that third one that you put in there is so important. I've seen a lot of user journeys mapped out really well, a lot of detail, and then without those actual action items coming out of it, they seem to, go all amount to nothing. So
yeah, they just kind of sit in a drawer somewhere, or they languish, and then a year down the line somebody goes, oh, hey, why didn't we do something about this? This isn't very good. It's like, well, yeah, we tried. But yeah,
so I think that's a key one.
Thank you. Cool. Okay, so let's move into starting to actually look at building a user journey. So the first thing you need in your user journey is going to be an actor. So the actor is the person who is going to experience this journey. And again, you would, ideally base this on a user persona that you've developed, or some real world insights that inform who the type of user your actor is. So in this case, we've got Sally Awesome, who's in her 20s, lives in a big city, brand loyal, social media user, and very socially conscious. But then once you've got an actor, you need to put them in some kind of situation. So we call these a scenario and expectation, the situation. So the scenario describes the situation that the map will address, and the expectations define the user's goal or their specific needs within this scenario. So now we can see we have Sally, who's 20. Sally wants to buy a new mobile phone, but is also discerning about who she'll spend her hard-earned money with. She values organizations that do some good in the world and that also still provide customer service. Okay. So what are the touch points on this journey? We're actually going to do a bit of an activity here. I'm going to put you all into a breakout room with a digital whiteboard to work on. And we're going to spend about 5 minutes just discussing within your own groups the steps that you think Sally will take in deciding she wants a new mobile phone, to walking away from a shop with a phone in her hand, through to that post-sale experience and support. in this whiteboard, you're going to be able to create Post-it notes, write down all of these steps, sticking to a single step per Post-it note. And you're going to want to think about as much of that process as you can think of as possible. So why did she decide that she needed a new phone? How does she find out about her new phone options, and so on and so forth? So I'm just going to put into the chat, there's going to be some links to Mural. And then I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. And yep.
Doing 2 sections. Why would you be?
Okay. Cool. 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 Okay. And yeah, so you should see those links. And my apologies, we're going to send you to breakout rooms. Cool. Okay, cool. So we're going to put you in, I'll just remind you again, we're just going to put you into these breakout rooms, and you're going to be using the link that assigns to your room number. And then once you get into there, you're going to see like a digital whiteboard with Post-it notes, and you can type in those Post-it notes. You can double click to create a new Post-it note and click and drag to move them around. And yeah, we want you to think about every single step you can think of that would go into this process of buying a new mobile phone, and write down these steps. Just keep one step to a Post-it note, and we'll give you about 5 minutes to do that. And let me just go set the room up. Cool. Okay, you should all be in breakout rooms now. Cool. So welcome back, everybody. How did you find that process? Was it interesting, or did you have any really interesting thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was good, but we had a few technical issues. Unfortunately, only I could access the mural board, so I was just we did a bit of a brainstorming session.
Oh, okay. Yeah, not sure what happened there. We'll have to have a look into that.
I think our group was the same. We didn't get through the whole exercise, but I think what we did kind of hone in on was the fact that Sally Awesome was 20, and that she probably would be looking at different ways of kind of researching, whether that's like kind of asking social media kind of what the best phone is, and you know, whether she'd go into a physical store or not. So that was kind of where our discussion started, but we didn't get much further than that.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, we're a little bit limited on time, but yeah, hopefully you managed to get a bit of a taste about some of the things you might think about in this process. Cool. Okay. So the next thing that would happen in this process is that we'd start to look at building a timeline. So I think it was Rosie that mentioned earlier when we were looking at the hints and tips that we would build these phases within this journey map. So you need a way of sort of mapping your user's experience across a time frame. So we do this by having these phases where you define actions over time. So what that might look like in this particular case of buying a mobile phone is we've just sort of arbitrarily placed discover, try, purchase, use, and post-purchase across this timeline. Within that, a user needs actions, thoughts, and feelings. So this can often be a bit sort of like, oh, it's quite a lot to take in. So within those phases, you can start plotting all this extra information. So actions are the actual behaviors and steps taken by the user as they move through this phases of this journey. So with the time starting at the left, you can see that the user is researching, she's discovering her options, she tries out a product before purchasing it, she moves to using it, living with it. And then we have that final phase is looking at the journey beyond the initial purchase and use period. So in this case, Sally needed some technical support and had to reach out back to who sold her the phone for that. Against that journey, we can also plot the thoughts and emotions of the user. So this is going to really, really help us to see where there's going to be some pain points in the service. And this really highlights where there's things that we can perhaps focus on improving or maybe even omitting from that service journey. And then we can also, based on our personas, we can also start adding things like quotes, sketches, and photos against that emotional journey and really start building up what is the story, what is the journey that this person steps through when they're trying to buy this product. So the next little activity that we're going to do, we're going to actually jump you back into those breakout rooms, and you can have a bit more time working on your user journey and developing that further. You'll see when you get into there that your templates have actually now been updated with these phases and things similar to as you just saw in the presentation. So what we want you to try and do is all those steps that you created and any new ones that you put in there, try and position them where you think they should sit within those phases of the user journey. And we're going to give you about 15 minutes for this task. So you can spend quite a bit of time thinking about that and adding anything new that you want to put in. And if you have the time and if you feel like getting some extra points, feel free to start adding in those emotional highs and lows, put maybe in some thoughts and quotes, things like that. So if you go back to the same room that you're in before, go back to the links in the chat, and I will put you back in the rooms.
Could you, James, sorry, could you post the links again in the chat, because some members in my team couldn't find them in the chat. I don't know why, but it was only me that could open the mural.
Okay, yeah, I think my colleague Matt's about to drop them in, so cool. Okay. We will send you over to your rooms. Great, so it looks like you all had a really good crack at that. I was jumping through some of the rooms and there's some really detailed user journeys in there. Did everybody find that okay? Did you have fun with it? Was it, did it all make sense?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. And at the end, when we reflected back on what we'd plotted out and thought about it from the position of the client, or say the Vodafone or the phone supplier, you could really work out where the kind of pain points were, you know, that you could help to try and alleviate. So actually applying kind of the logical sense across it, but then applying that filter of how Sally was feeling throughout the journey was really important, rather than just purely functional.
Yeah, perfect. That's really awesome. Yeah, it's so much, it's kind of good fun and enlightening doing these processes and then just kind of spotting like, this is really where we need to put our effort to make this better for someone. Focusing in the wrong area.
I feel
and
like
just bring, sorry.
I was just going to say, I feel like you could really go down some rabbit holes with it though.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you can like hit like one pain point maybe, and you could take that one pain point and probably create another user journey out of that pain point, and keep going and keep going. But you know, this is where you can start to sort of you know, instead of going down that, you may be able to sort of look at this user journey and go, well, what happens if we try and like omit that altogether from the service? You know, does that smooth things out? Things like that you can try.
I'll jump in there as well.
Caroline, and
You're on mute, Matt.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry, James and I are just jostling over who gets to be off mute. I think my experience with that has been that it's helpful to sort of work out what the overall, like the broader journey looks like to start with, and then go into as much detail as you think is helpful, focusing on the parts of the journey where you think the issues might be or where you think the biggest change might need to happen. So often you might start by doing a pretty broad user journey, and you look at that and say, all right, where might the sort of pain points be? Where might the opportunities to improve this be? And then you can pick part of that. And as you probably noticed, you can go down rabbit holes. You could pick any sort of one of those post-it notes and almost do an entire user journey, like mapping out that post-it note and what that looks like in a lot more detail. And so it depends a little bit on, strategically, where do you want to spend that time and energy? Because some stuff, if it's working really well already, there's no need to go into that level of detail. But some stuff, if you want to really sort of drill down into something and work out where the issues are happening, it can be helpful to sort of to zoom in a bit on those problem areas within the map.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Matt.
Cool. Okay, cool. So one of the next things I wanted to touch on is that when you're in these sort of like design world, let me just try and get rid of that for you. Okay, cool, sorry. Is that you will hear the word map a lot, and there are quite a few different sort of mapped techniques, I guess, in doing this. So I just wanted to touch on what the differences are between some of these things and potentially how you might use the different maps. So the first one is thinking about a user journey map versus an experience map. So an experience map is, you can think of as kind of the parent to a user journey. It's much broader and covers a more, I guess, generalized human behavior or generalized behavior of a group of people or a group of customers, rather than the individual that we focused on in this case. Another one you're going to come across is a service blueprint. So you can think of the service blueprint as like the child of a user journey map. So a service blueprint dives into visualizing the relationships between different service components and tends to focus more on like the business and what it does to support a customer. So you start thinking about, you got Sally that's bought a mobile phone, but behind that, you have to start thinking about, there's a website, there's procurement, there's billing, there's support staff, there's technical support, there's freight, there's warehousing, all kinds of little things like that in the service blueprint. And then the one that can cause a lot of people a bit of a struggle is a user story map. A user story map can be visually almost the same as a user journey map. So where the user journey tends to be a bit more of a big picture of a complete journey a user takes from, deciding to need that phone to the post-sale service with that phone or the post-sale experience with that phone. A user story is more focused and breaks down into some quite specific steps that the user takes. For example, I know a few people were looking at, a digital purchasing experience in their user journey. So a user story map might be starting to like map out the specifics of that website. Where do you click? What happens when you click there? What Google search terms have they used? Things like that. So yeah, there's a few different things to be aware of in that. And that brings us pretty quickly towards the end. So we've got a bit of time. So if there's people would like to speak about their experiences with this or have questions to ask, would like to talk more, then we do have plenty of time. So I can open up the floor to you guys.
Can I ask a question? It's Rosie here.
Sure.
It's around, I have done a lot of customer journey mapping sessions with staff and with end users, customers. And the thing I always struggle with is, yeah, we capture like emotions at each stage, and that's really important. I get that. But then it's like, how do I use that to form actions?
That's a very good question that I might even ask Matt to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, before I jump in, as Jane said at the start, part of the beauty of the SkillGyms is that you're learning as much from the community as you are from us. So is there anyone in the room who's had some experience in that and has got some great tips on how to go from, awesome, we've mapped this, now how do we actually turn this into actions and what do we do with it? Feel free to jump off mute and jump in.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind just saying that it can be a good way of prioritizing where you should focus.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So I think we've got a few like really upset emojis on our one. So it could just be a good place to kind of, and then it's a good way as well to demonstrate to people who don't really get it, like bring the journey to life as to why. So you can kind of talk about why that emoji is there, and get them to put their, you know, empathy hats on and put their mind in that place of a user to really unpack as to why they might feel that way, and they create the actions themselves, which means they're more bought into them.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I guess if you did a before and after journey map as well, you'd want to see like lots of happy emotions rather than negative ones. So I guess it's a way of showing a change that you might have made and the positive
real simple
difference
way,
you might have had.
Showing value, which, you know, everybody always gets asked to show value. So instead of spending loads of time on data points, you could actually do it in a really simple way.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Donna.
That's a great point, Rosie. I think around that, the sort of current state versus future state mapping is a really interesting one. I think what we often find is that sort of basic user journey mapping can be helpful as like a prototyping tool to help you work out what would it look like for people to engage with this new thing that I'm coming up with. But if you try and go into too much detail, it's a little bit too easy in the future state to just map it out as if everything's going to be perfect and it's going to go exactly like you planned. Do you know what I mean? And so when you actually go out and try the prototype in the real world, then you tend to figure out, oh, hang on, people didn't respond in that perfect ideal way that I expected them to. So often we sort of recommend, particularly things like service blueprinting, which goes into a bit more depth, as James was speaking about. That sort of tends to be best at the current state mapping process, so you can work out what's going on at the moment, just like you guys did with the sort of the phone journey, and what are the sort of pain points and what happens right now. And then in terms of going from that to action points, one of the things that we encourage people to do is a process called Rosebud and Thorn, which I think is inspired by the Boy Scouts, I think, use that sort of logic. But the idea being that a rose is something that's working really well currently, and that we can sort of try and amplify and do more of. A thorn is obviously something that's a pain point, something that's not working currently. And a bud is sort of a missed opportunity, if you like. It's an area of the map where it's not really a thorn, it's not necessarily a pain point, but if we did something a little bit differently, we could actually create lots of value or create one of those moments of surprise and delight. We'll go a bit above and beyond for this customer or user, and we've just missed that opportunity currently. And that can give you some really interesting points to sort of intervene. And then the other thing that we recommend is then starting to design some experiments around that. So rather than just saying, all right, these are the things we need to improve, right? What do we do about it? It's sort of saying, all right, here are the experiments we're going to design from a customer experience point of view. This is our hypothesis. If we change this, then we think this will be the results. Here's how long we're going to run it for and what we're going to do and what metrics we're going to look at. And then, you know, 3 months from now, we'll have a look at whether our phone sales actually did increase or whether our feedback surveys did improve or whatever it might be. And then we'll know whether that thing that we changed actually had the impact that we're looking for. So sort of structuring it as an experiment can be really helpful, I think, for teams as well. Did anyone else have any questions, any comments that they wanted to jump in with while we've got you all on the call? I'll go back to James.
It's Rosie again. God, I feel like I'm monopolising this. So I'm really sorry.
It's all right.
Just like to say thanks to James, seeing it's your first one. I think you've done pretty well. I'm loving the functionality that you've introduced to this. I'm really getting lots of ideas for when I have to do these type of sessions. But I mean, I've used, I think one of the challenges I have with customer journey mapping, or because I'm very much used to doing them with a group of users or customers, but I think those days are gone now. Actually, logistically getting people or focus groups in a room together to do these sort of sessions, it just doesn't happen these days, does it? So it's more about trying to do it either using a persona or actually doing it remotely using tools like Miro and Mural. I just wondered if that's something that in your experience people tend to do, or do you just tend to use personas and imagine the person as the user?
I think there's probably value in both paths to go with that one. It depends, like sort of like your user group and your customer, how engaged are they with your product or service? Like if you have people that are sort of like the biggest fans of what you produce, then you might find that they're very willing to sit down for an hour and jump into an online session or come to workshops and things like that. But if your customers are very sort of hands-off and don't really want to be bothered by you unless they're actively engaged with you, then you would have to sort of be more of an insights-based persona type thing and have to sort of make those assumptions. But obviously your assumptions then tested through things like your prototyping and your experiments and feedback and things like that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's any more questions, we'll probably wrap it up there. So fingers crossed, hope that this has been useful to you and you'll be able to incorporate using these user journeys into your work. Thank you very much for your patience with me clicking the wrong buttons and asking for help from my mentor here. Maybe next time it won't be quite like that. So what have we got else available to you? If you want to continue your learning in human-centered design, you can check out our online learning platform, Skills Social. When you get to Skills Social, you're going to have lots of modules that you can learn through. It's all self-led, lots of videos, templates, quizzes, interactive resources and things like that. You can just learn entirely at your own pace. There's no one to force you. And coming up next, I believe next month, we're going to be discussing customer empathy, getting beyond the basics and implementing using empathy in your work. So thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate your patience and for coming along, and we'll see you at the next one.